Do you find yourself stuck in negative thoughts? Well, this is the video for you. I'm going to break down 3 ways that you can get yourself out of the negative, lower vibrational thoughts and unstuck into the more positive spectrum of thoughts and perspectives that will arm you for being able to create the outcomes that you so desire. My name is Teresa Brenna, and I'm a mindfulness integration coach. I help you become the most empowered version of you by helping remind you of how powerful you are as a conscious creator. Today's tool is going to center around my spiritual toolbox collection. If you're new to my channel, welcome, welcome. It's always a joy to bring in new, lovely, beautiful souls as we grow together. If you are one of my followers that has been with me through this journey, thank you so much for being part of this with me. We are only just getting started, and I look forward to a long-term building this wherever it goes and wherever it takes us. We have endless amount of expansion to be gained in this lifetime, and it's an honor to journey with you. So going back to my spiritual toolbox, it's a collection of tools, of mindfulness tools and practices that can help you be more in an empowered state of being versus some of the disempowering kind of conditioning we've received over our lives. Today's tool comes from the spiritual toolbox, and this is one of the OGs that first got added into the collection. This came to me during a period of early on in my spiritual awakening when I became more conscious of just like my power, I guess, and the connection with Source, Mother, Father, God, Divine Creator, whatever word you attribute to the higher power. This tool was also, I would like to say, born out of listening to Esther Hicks' Law of Attraction a lot in my journey at that time. So some of these little tidbits kind of come from those narratives and some of her teachings, and I just want to attribute the reference to where it is well owed, because we all teach each other in our journeys, and sometimes I take what I've learned from other teachers and apply it directly, or I may put a new spin on it, or I may build on from it from there. And this is kind of one of those situations. So let's just dive right in. Why you want to know about this word is because it is going to help you shift very quickly whenever you're in a disempowered state. Let me break this down. The word that we are going to key into is perspective. And yes, this part is done intentionally backwards. No need to adjust your monitors or your screens. This is, I'm a graphic designer. I've been a brand designer for 25 years. So I do like to use typography or visuals to tie in another visual metaphor. And with perspective being shifted, being flipped, it's showing visually how this word, like the operative verb of this word, and that is essentially we're going to try to flip the script and turn something negative into a positive. It's not always going to look like that. And this isn't one of those only think positive thoughts kind of videos or teachings. I would never necessarily say that. I think everything deserves a process. And if your desire is to shift from something negative into a positive, then these are great tools for that. Otherwise, if you are thinking negative thoughts and your goal is just to stay there and stay with that energy, stay with those feelings and feel them all the way through, then more power to you. You have any opportunity, the option to shift. And if and whenever you're ready for that, these are the tools that can help you with that. But first, as we unpack this word, we have to zoom out for a second and just remember a few things. First of all, this entire universe is open for interpretation, and it's also unlimited. It may seem sometimes as though there are limitations, and I think all perspectives are valid from a certain level of reality, but the truth in a level of a reality is that we live in an unlimited universe. Our souls are eternal and unlimited as well. And why this is important, why I'm bringing it up, is because it's a good reminder to embrace that, especially in those moments when we are thinking the negative or we are entertaining the negative narrative. It's because for a brief amount of time, we are entertaining this limited version of reality. And that inherently is why it kind of feels negative in us, because our hearts, which are our powerhouse of creation as well, and overall, just like your soul, your higher self, any other higher guidance that you tap into, is trying to remind you that you're not keying into your highest truth, and that is that you have unlimited potential, unlimited possibility to tap into, And once you tap into that energy, what does it feel like? It should feel open and expansive and feel good, because that is the state of empowerment that in some perspectives believe that that is our natural state of being, is in the frequency of love and of expansion, of possibility, and really being empowered and owning our creative, conscious creator selves. So in that light, I just want to remind you that this entire universe is open to interpretation. Just because you're interpreting a certain situation or a thought a certain way doesn't mean that that is the end all be all judgment call. You have at any opportunity the option to see it from a different lens, to shift that perspective and interpret it a different way. We're going to expand on that in just a second, a little bit more. But just to piggyback, but just to springboard off of that for just a second, everything just is in this universe. We as humans are the only ones who really attribute meaning to things. So yes, while certain circumstances may play out and we may perceive them as negative, it may not feel good. The truth and reality is that we actually have the opportunity to view that situation any way we want to. One of the ways, or one of the sayings that I've really anchored into my being and really integrated is that all things happen for me, not to me. The difference there is an empowered state of being versus victim mentality, where, oh, this thing is happening to me. Why is it always my luck? This thing always happens when this happens, and bad things happen in threes. These sort of like stories and narratives in a victim mindset have not always served me in trying to create from a more empowered state. When we are in our empowered conscious creator mode, that is when we can really springboard off of something fruitful, because we have expansive, open energy. We are keying into the powerful source consciousness, creator energy that we have tapped into, that has been gifted unto us as souls. This is just a reminder that you are a source creator, that you as a soul were given the gift of creating your inner world as well as your outer world. And how do we do that? How do we create? Through our, well, so many different mechanisms, but just to distill it into some of the common ones, it's through love. We create through our minds. We need our mind as a tool, sort of a gateway to kind of connect and bridge the non-physical with the physical. Not saying it's the end all be all, but it is a tool to be used to kind of bridge those two together. We also co-create with others. We create with the universe. So this tool calls you back to your source creator self. And that source creator is not going to be stuck in the vibrations of limitation, because you simply just cannot create from lack. The only thing you possibly could create, even if that was possible, is more lack. In order to tap into probably the outcome that you're looking for, is to create from endless possibility, or to shift the perspective of the limited idea you have in your mind right now into a more expansive idea. And that'll create some juice, some momentum under you, and you'll feel yourself shifting into a more empowered state of being. You'll know, because you'll feel more expansive. Things will start to kind of open up, and new ideas will start to flood in of how you can move forward, how you can solve the problem, or how you can shift your belief about what is going on, and how you can move forward. Possibilities are endless. We just need to know how to reorient ourselves. So I think I covered all of that. This perspective tool will help you get from that limited perspective into unlimited perspective. We're going to tap into the unlimited end of the frequencies. In some cases, you may find that you are in your ego as you interpret certain situations, and this will shift you into what I like to say the higher power, or I'm just going to use the word God, Father, Mother, God. It'll shift you into God's perspective. Again, God is unlimited, and as souls, we have this honor of being an aspect of Source, Mother, Father, God, and we have endless tools of creation. I mean, if you think about it, we create our inner worlds, our thoughts, our inner landscapes, and then we also thereby create our outer worlds, as within, so without, as you may have heard that saying. So it's just an incredible honor. We just have to remind ourselves of our role and kind of see it from God's perspective, right? That ultimate bird's eye view that's beyond the heavens, that's beyond so much. And I'm going to circle back to that because I kind of have a story where that's concerned. And then you may shift from being stuck in the mind into the higher realms. And what I mean by this is when we talk about perspective, you may have heard of a couple different sayings, like the bird's eye view, take a 10,000 foot perspective to kind of see the forest through the trees. Well, another way to think about this is if you're just at eye level, at ground zero, walking around, and let's say you're approaching a forest, just going to play with that metaphor, and you think, wow, I see only 5 trees in front of me. But the truth in a reality, if you zoom out and from, outer space, you can see that there's a huge forest, and within this forest, then there is a lake back there, and then even more other possibilities and discoveries to be made. You had no idea there was more that existed beyond that because you're only seeing the trees. You weren't seeing the forest through the trees. And so to me, that is how I shift out of my mind. The mind is always going to perceive by default limitations until you consciously, through your source, creator, potential, and power, you help it shift into examining other possibilities. Okay, and I'm going to walk you through that practice, the 3 steps, so you'll know what I'm talking about. And why I say higher realms is because, to me, I always try to get a higher wisdom, higher perspective when I am viewing things, and I know that I'm just kind of like stuck in my mind, or feel like maybe my ego's taking me for a ride. I'm going to pump the brakes and tap in with my higher guidance team, or you could tap into your heart, anything that's of a higher power that is loving and trustworthy and beloved to you. You could tap into that, versus the mind is always going to perceive those limitations, and the ego is going to put you in a box. None of those places are great for when you're trying to shift. And I also say higher realms because what I will do here is sometimes I will consult my oracle card deck and pull a couple cards if I'm just like, I don't really know how to move forward, or this thing is really twisting me up. I don't feel very good about it. How can I see a different perspective? What are you seeing from your viewpoint? And those are friends in the higher realms, whether it's angels or archangels or your spirit team, passed on loved ones, ancestors. Oh my gosh, there's so many. You could even go further than that. And if you're a star seed, you may resonate with calling in your star family, or beloved beings that are benevolent, that are of a higher dimension. Those any of those perspectives, they're not on the 3D level, so they actually can see more of a bird's eye view. I don't know the exact specifics. I don't know if any of us really do, about all the different dimensions and how everything interplays, and there's a reason why we don't. But I do know that they have a higher perspective, and that innately, being in higher realms, they can see more beyond what we can, and that is why I highly value tapping into their insights. That way I can kind of shift into a new perspective and, oh man, didn't even think of it like that. It helps. It definitely helps. We can shift out of our own self container, our own experience, and possibly see into others, put ourselves into another person's perspective. And, this can be done in contemplation, or we can have a conversation, dialogue with another person to, if we're working towards a resolution and understanding, so we can understand their perspective. Perspective dictates reality. I'm just going to say that one more time. Perspective dictates reality. So how you are viewing something is going to greatly affect how you may move forward and how you're interpreting the situation. What you accept as your perspective can then become your reality. And whether that is a perspective that is empowering, such as I'm just gonna, the abundance thing is pretty easy. Everyone seems to welcome more of that in their lives. So I'm just gonna say if I believe that and hold the perspective that all things are always happening for me each and every single day, even if there may seem like there are curveballs, I can take the perspective that this is actually training for me to get the lesson so that I can sort of like level up or continue to align with the frequency or the situations that will welcome in the thing that I'm calling in. Or I could view things as things are happening to me. This sucks. Like, why am I always the victim? Why does the world hate me? You know, in that kind of lower state, even just kind of saying those words, I feel a lot of contraction happening and it does not feel good. I have like flags firing off internally because I've really trained myself out of this type of narrative. But in that kind of state, what is happening? Well, I'm accepting the reality that things are happening to me and it's me against the world. And I'm just going to continue to I'm going to continue to experience that because it's now shaped as a belief. Perspective dictates reality. Just remember that. And your perspective is always, it can always shift and be open for interpretation. Nothing is, let me put it this way. You know, things may happen in our lives that we may not have control over, but we can have control over our perspective of the situation, of how we choose to interpret what happened. We get to own that. No one else can tell us. It's up to us. So that's the thing I want to leave you with. At any time, if you are struggling and are really stuck in some negative thoughts, negative perspective of the situation that you're encountering, I highly encourage you to flip the perspective and walk through this practice. This practice helps you get from the lower vibrations into the more higher and empowering vibrations. It helps you get out of that unconscious or subconscious, lower subterranean levels of the mind, where we may have thoughts and patterns that by default bring us into the more negative spectrum of interpretation and into a more conscious state of being. The conscious is at 5 to 10% of level of our mind that we get to be like, whoa, wait, like I'm not just gonna be following the programs that I have instilled within me. We are still going through lots of purging of old programs, old disserving and limiting beliefs as a collective and also individually. So it is up to us to make use, as much use as possible of that tiny 5 to 10% of our conscious level of our mind, where we can pump the brakes on all that programming, or where we may find ourselves in a disempowered state and then bring us back into an empowered state. So that's really what the operation of mindfulness is. It's actually not to bring you more into your mind. As a mindfulness coach, I want to make that very clear. I'll probably have to do a video on this, but I'm not trying to bring you more into your mind. What we're trying to do is bring our awareness and our position of creation back into that conscious, empowered state of being, where we can own a better narrative that is better serving us, so that we can create from abundance and not from lack. And abundance meaning like open to all other possibilities kind of thing, or peace versus lack and loss. And this is a mindfulness practice with 3 easy steps that we're going to cover in just a moment. But first, I want to just share with you how some examples of where I went from here to here. A long time ago, when it feels like a whole other lifetime altogether, guys. But once upon a time, I was married I can't even remember. I know I was with this individual for like 9 years total. I think we were married 5 or 6. I can't remember. But during that period where I was healing after the divorce, I just remember like I just had so much to heal and so many layers. It was enamoring. But I just remember feeling really like caught up in my own experience, and I was really seeking a higher self to get out of my own stuff and looking for inspiration and hope. So what I decided to do was I started to ask from God's perspective, how does God view this situation between me and this individual? How is God seeing me going through what I'm going through and my lessons and my growth and my grievance and all the things? And how is God seeing this other individual? I don't think I was resentful at that time, but I do know I was working on a lot of forgiveness, and I really needed to see outside of myself in order to get there, in order to find the compassion. And it was through shifting my perspective out of myself into God. And when I did that, I saw two innocent souls with all the good intentions in the world, who had certain lessons to learn between one another. And even though it did cause some pain at that time, that there still is endless supply of unconditional love. And not in a sense where I was trying to get back with that individual, but from like we are all one family, oneness, unconditional love kind of level. And I also just saw the innocence of all parties involved. Like I'll save you just some in case you're wondering, like, is she okay? Like, was that all okay? Yes. Like, it was probably the most graceful divorce ever. We didn't have kids, and so it was just like a open shut case, but it still doesn't make it easier. I just want you to know, like, it was fine. There wasn't a drama. There wasn't like, oh, he cheated on me or something really awful. But still, there's stuff there that I needed to heal. And anyway, it was through shifting out of my own experience into the higher realms, into the highest of all high perspective. And that was through seeing it through God's eyes, seeing this individual through God's eyes. And that really helped me be able to forgive that individual when I couldn't find it in my own personal strength. So this is a powerful healing tool, even at that. I mentioned how I often seek higher guidance through through pulling oracle cards, and that always gets me through. But I also sometimes will, I guess you could say, channel or meditate and get some insights. When I'm really, really stuck, I will consult my guides in the higher realms and get from their perspective, from their bird's eye view, what is the situation to them. And it's really interesting how it's never as intense or bad or separate or like me against them as the ego and mind will have you interpret situations. And even when I drop into my heart and view it from that perspective, any problem just sort of like diminishes. It's kind of amazing how we can shift different perspectives and shift our realities just simply by seeking a higher perspective. It puts everything else into place. The last thing I wanted to mention as far as ways that this tool has really helped me in my life. I know a lot of people recently, I've been hearing how people have been going through some losses, how they've lost a loved one. And there's a lot of pain and grief with that as well. And I want to, just hold some space and say, I'm so sorry, like that you're going through that. If you may be going through that too. But this actually did help me during a period where I was processing some intense grief and the loss of a loved one. They were actually a soulmate connection. And I remember when I was, oh my gosh, just like before I even pre-awakening. My gosh, I can't even remember the year. It's kind of a blur. Maybe 2006. I don't know, but it was my early 20s, and this guy one of my friends had passed away very suddenly, very tragically. And like I said, he was kind of a soulmate connection. I knew him from my childhood. We were in the same neighborhood, grew up together, not together, but like in the same kind of circles and same neighborhood. And so yeah, we kind of knew each other from then. And then we even dated a little bit during, I think, during junior high. And he was just always someone special to me. And unfortunately, just as we were starting to reconnect, after we went off to college, and this is when I lived in Minneapolis, I reconnected with him. He used to work at the airport after being in the Army for a little while, or National Guard, something like that. Anyway, passed away. And it was really tragic for me because not a lot of people understood our backstory and that we were at that time starting to rekindle something special. And I just felt like betrayed even. Like, what the hell? We were just starting to like build a life, and then you just go and abandon me. But anyway, those feelings aside, I just want you to know that it was like really intense for me. It was beyond just losing a friend. It was like losing a potential life partner. And in my early 20s, I just was not strong enough to handle something like that. So what this ended up doing, how I shifted, was at that time, I was during my heaviest grievance, when I felt so lost, I was seeing limitation. I was seeing lost. I was seeing lack. So I was seeing this as, he's not here, he's gone, forever gone. And that was really intense. That was hard to move forward. I felt completely stuck, because once you see you have lack, then you'll always just focus on that lack. It, you know, they say it gets easier in time, but like that just means you're starting to train yourself on not thinking about it as much, but you still haven't fully shifted from it. At least that's how I felt about the situation. And then I eventually, at some point, I know my sister had a conversation with me because she could tell I was really distraught. And after weeks, just like not getting better. And she said this one thing that kind of opened up my whole world. She had said that, like, well, energy is energy, and people, we're energy. And, you know, even though I don't have this all figured out, but I do know that energy never dies. And at that time, I was kind of keying into some thought leaders that were talking about that, how energy never really dies. And we can prove this scientifically. We know this, right? It just changes form. And so I like really bought into that. I was like, you know what? You're right. And then it was from that I just shifted overnight. Like, I just get goosebumps even retelling this story, because it was so profound. Like, it's amazing how one sentence that someone shares with you can shift you entirely, can like awaken you, and you're forever changed. But I shifted back into unlimited. He left the physical. Yes, that is true. But now he exists in the non-physical. So it went from not here, forever gone, into here in the non-physical. And that brought me so much peace. That brought me hope too, because I think you all kind of are aware there are psychic mediums out there, and they have the ability to interact with the other side of the veil, if you will. And it gave me hope that I could reach him. And it also inspired me to start playing around with my spiritual abilities, or to try to channel or communicate with him. But either way, it like opened up hope and brought me peace. So that's just another example of how this tool is really kind of a Swiss Army knife. It can work for almost anything that you want to shift your perspective out of. So let's get right into the practice. Here are 3 steps in how you can shift from the negative perspectives into a more higher and empowering perspective. Number 1, first thing is first, you got to bring your awareness to the thing. This may seem like elementary, but it's worth noting. So step 1, you have to bring your awareness that this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling, and I don't want to feel this way. It's a choice point. It's a choice point right here at number 1. If you want to change your perspective, then move on to step 2. It's a choice. You don't have to. You can stay there and wallow if you want, for as long as you want. Then step number 2, you're going to ask yourself questions. It may need only just one, or you may need to ask a couple, 2, 3, I don't know, to get the ball rolling. But the number 1 question I like to ask myself in this unlimited universe with unlimited potentials and infinite possibilities, I ask myself, what else is possible? Okay, I see that, I'm just gonna make something up. I have a gas bill, and I don't have enough money to cover it. What else is possible? What else is possible? And even just kind of asking myself that, my mind started going many different directions. Like, oh, maybe I could ask this person, or oh, maybe I could, like, it started to come up with solutions, because I started to, as a conscious creator, start to steer it in that path. You are the navigation system. You can also ask yourself, even more specifically, like, how else can I pay that bill? Or how else can I view this situation? Or how can I view this from God's perspective? Or how can I view this from another person's perspective, from that other party involved? What may he or she be thinking and feeling? Another question you can ask yourself to start to shift into that empowered state of being is kind of ask yourself, like the number one word I try to key into is how, How. How else can this work out for me? How can this situation work out in my favor? I'll tell you what, there is an alarming amount of student loan debt. You know, if you're a millennial or Gen X and you have some student loan debt, you know what I'm talking about this, the financial institutions, the system, the system, all of the things about the system, which I'm not going to go into a rant about here, but I think, you know, regardless, I started to feel very disempowered. And then finally I started to ask myself, because what else am I going to do? Just sit there and be frustrated about it? No, I want to tap back into my conscious creator mode and see what else is possible. So I started to ask myself, even this morning, I was like, how can this situation work out in my favor? And I started to feel like the creative juice is flowing, source energy, I'm tapping into that unlimited source potential, and some ideas struck me. I got a couple of sparks of different approaches that I wouldn't have otherwise gotten if I hadn't shifted out of my perspective, because when you shift out of your perspective, you shift out of the other reality. So here we go. You're already arriving at step 3, that new interpretation. I was able to interpret the situation as I still have options to play with, okay? And even that, I can create from that. I can't create from lack, and I can't create so very well out of a disempowered victim state. It's kind of, it seizes you up. You're locked up. And so there I arrived with new ideas given by that new interpretation, because I shifted my perspective. And once you arrive finally at step 3, celebrate, because congratulations, you've just shifted into a new reality or a new timeline. I know that gets a little like woo-woo and a little bit into the esoteric. I know a lot of other people like to say, you know, this is how you shift out your reality. This is how you shift into another dimension. But it really just comes down to that. You're shifting frequencies. You're shifting from the contracted victim mentality or limited perspective into the higher, more expansive energies that are, they're literally like this. It's like a toroidal field where you can create from that. It's ever boundless. And given unto you to use at your disposal. It's just a matter of shifting that perspective. And then you shift your frequency into the higher vibration of love, abundance, peace, joy, anything the higher perspective or a higher spectrum of frequencies. And from that state, that's empowerment, baby. You can do anything from that state. So let me know how this tool goes as you shift your perspective and flip that perspective into a more empowered state that helps you create the desired outcome you're probably trying to achieve. Thank you so much for your support in my channel. It means a lot. I love you all. Please comment below how this worked for you, how you shifted from one thing to the other. What was that thing? I'd love to know. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.